Having access to social media presents us with entertainment, connections, and oftentimes education. However, the information we read when scrolling through these platforms doesn't always come from credible sources, or it is often swayed to accommodate political affiliations, which can be detrimental for young people trying to make decisions for themselves. For example, when I was growing up, politics and current events were never talked about in my home, but instead were talked about on Facebook. Only receiving the same information and viewpoints from my family confused me, and I felt frustrated that I was never taught some of the most basic and important concepts happening in the world, especially when I usually never agreed with my family on their ideologies. But since I was never taught how our economy works, who the presidential candidates are and what they stand for, my constitutional rights, current laws being passed, court cases at the time, and so much more, I often felt uninformed. Interestingly enough, teaching current events in American schools is not required, only recommended. High school students typically graduate around the age of 18, meaning students often leave their schools with a newfound right to vote and all the privileges associated with being an adult, including jury duty and the additional consequences of misconduct. Unfortunately, because current events aren't taught on a regular basis in most high schools, a vast majority of students enter adulthood uneducated on issues that are directly affecting them. In addition, discussing topics related to politics or subjects that have polarizing opinions traditionally do not provide a safe atmosphere for students and teachers to express their thoughts without causing turmoil, which is exactly why I propose that technology should be introduced to foster anonymous conversations about current events that pulls credible media from opposing ideologies. Having an online platform where students are allowed to anonymously express their opinions, devoid of biases from teachers and other students, is necessary, not only for equitable learning, but also for encouraging respect for opposing views. Dr. Henry Jensen supports this assertion when he writes, "A Pew study suggests young people who create and circulate their own media are more likely to respect the intellectual property rights of others because they feel a greater stake in the cultural economy." Having a platform to voice opinions and analyze important current events in the media is essential for properly educating our population, as a more educated youth leads to more informed voters. However, a potential detriment to having this voice as a First Amendment right is the facilitation of contorted media, where topics can be twisted in order to conform to people's beliefs. Monica Anderson and Jingjing Jiang noted these findings at the Pew Research Center when 15% of teens reported thinking that social media distorts reality, whilst 27% believe social media is a catalyst for spreading rumors. Therefore, I propose that having technology be used as a social platform with diverse media is an equitable way to educate students throughout high school on present world events. As Collins and Hoverson said, when schools neglect to include virtual learning resources and the devices that support these tools in everyday practices of teaching, then the inequities in the knowledge and skills brought by students to their classrooms goes unchallenged. Thus, I present to you my technological innovation termed BNCEF, which stands for Breaking News and Current Events Forum. BNCEF is an anonymous online discussion forum where students can create accounts and participate in conversations related to current events and news without the biases of the classroom. Students are able to engage in multimedia sources describing events from multiple different perspectives so they can choose their own stance and opinions, while also having an outlet to learn from their peers. In order to promote students to freely express their thoughts, accounts will be completely anonymous, where usernames and profile pictures will depict something such as an animal. Teachers also will not be able to identify students based off of their chosen identity in order to prevent favoritism of opinions reflected in the grading. Therefore, points will be assigned based on participation and completion of assignments, thus making responses on particularly sensitive topics to be very low risk. However, if a student feels uncomfortable responding to any of the forums that week, they can easily opt out with a quick email to their teacher by clicking on Petition to Not Participate. As you can see, this student needs to complete their weekly assignment, so they'll go to the Topics page. Here, students will see a list of current events happening at the global, national, and state scales. Brief descriptions will be given about each event, and students are free to choose a topic to respond to. In this example, pertaining to the week of June 5, 2020, we can see global news about the coronavirus and the Black Lives Matter movement. On the national scale, we can see news about Donald Trump's executive order on preventing online censorship and information on the College Board being sued. Finally, on the state scale here in California, we can choose to respond to the mayor's resignation in a California city or to the news about the wildfires. Let's pretend that this student chose to respond to the forum of Trump's executive order. In this example, the student will be given an official copy of the executive order from the White House to read before reading 2 additional opposing articles on the subject. In this case, the first article from the New York Times titled, "Trump's Response to Twitter is Unconstitutional Harassment," will argue against the executive order, while the second article from the American Spectator titled, "Twitter's War on Trump," will argue in support of the order. After reading or watching all the information provided, students will either participate in a current discussion as shown between usernames Tiger and Flamingo, or simply write a general response to the subject. By allowing students to respond to current events anonymously, BNCEF successfully addresses the educational issue where students' learning is often focused more on the past opposed to the present, as well as preventing the swayed information associated with an individual person teaching the subject. In searching for a similar platform to BNCEF, I found a lot of similarities in debate websites, specifically Kialo. Kialo is a website that describes itself as being the only website specifically designed for rational debates. After researching the platform, I noticed similarities where my innovation and Kialo both propose topics with background information and then allow for discussions, and we both have school-centered applications. However, I think my innovation is unique in the sense that the topics always apply to the most current news and events directly as they happen, while Kialo focuses more on broad controversial issues. Lastly, I find my innovation to be unique because it encourages students to express their own opinions on a topic, while Kialo centers debate mentality, where students sometimes have to argue for a perspective they don't agree with. Overall, the Breaking News and Current Events Forum has many broader social impacts, the first being that students will have a more comprehensive understanding of the world around them. Assuming BNCEF becomes a mandatory part of history classes, students will be able to utilize their knowledge of historical events and compare them to present occurrences. For example, after learning about previous presidents in history class, students can compare and contrast those ideals with the policies and ideologies of Donald Trump. Also, if students were taught about the presidential election and candidates' policies from multiple media sources, this would lead to more informed voters and an overall more educated population. Another social impact BNCEF might also have is allowing students to have a greater appreciation for opposing ideologies. Especially in political debates, people often commit logical fallacies such as ad hominems, where people attack the person opposed to their argument when the debate becomes heated and contentious. By forcing students to read opposing narratives, they must consider and process the arguments on both sides before making their decision, which will theoretically promote both civic awareness and digital literacy even beyond their high school years. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.